if you have a lecture, you always need a title, and this is the difficult part to find one. It's a long time ago, Michael once called me, hey, do you know if Freitag would be a song, I have the title for you, which would be then On the Road Again. And since I know he's much a better singer than we are, we thought, okay, let's think about another title. I'm not sure, which one have we chosen now?
Let's see.
Okay. Ideas, the Freitag Gasoline. And yeah, there is some road within as well. And then we thought, okay, where shall we start the story tonight? 1993, that's the birth date of Freitag. And yeah, that was the time when we started building up a brand. And what do you need to build up a brand? You need money. You need a business plan, you need to know who is your target group, you need a big advertising campaign, and so on. And then we thought, no, that was not our way. We set up the brand. That's why we go a little more back in the time. We go back to 1969. That was the time I was made. 1 year later, I was born. And what are the ingredients of, for example, me and Daniel? It's the cooperation of a public, how you call it, PR specialist.
Yeah, public relations specialist.
Oh, it's not on, I think.
Okay.
And that was our father, Hans-Peter Freitag, and he was...
Okay, yeah, now I have a voice now.
Okay.
I'm here as well, yeah, okay, good. So it was our father and our mother, and she was social worker. So the PR guy and the social worker came together and started a family. And that's what we call today social eco-marketing. So then 1970 was my birthday.
Just 14 months later, I was born. So we're close together. Some people think we're twins, but let's put it there. Is it too loud? It's okay? Good. All right. But we jump a little bit further. In the year 1975, that's the age of when people go to kindergarten, and there we learned something very important for us. So when you eat the apple and you have the rest of it, what do you do with it? Don't do it in the garbage, throw it in the backyard. And that's what's really one of the learnings which was super important for us. We call ourselves children from the compost generation. So we learned on the compost, the plants are bigger than in the rest of the garden. I think this thinking in cycles, we will see this evening a little bit more later on.
Uh, 1979, this is a complex story. Maybe you can tell this one, right?
Actually, it's a story about advertising. I'm sure Michael is aware of the brand Toni. It's a yogurt in Switzerland, and I think it was the first advertising campaign that I was kind of aware of, because they didn't really promote the yogurt itself, but they promoted the packaging. It was the slogan, Toni das im Glas, Toni the one in the glass. And so actually it was the glass with a little plastic top, which was a whole kind of recycling system. So they told you, bring back the glass. It's a recycling system. And so they had two things. One thing was they was a sort of wie heißt das, Kundenbindung, kind of customer relation management. So when you bring back your yogurt glass, then you obviously buy a new one. And at the other hand, this sort of glass was for us really a sort of not only recycling but recontextualization, because this glass was really a container used for everything in Switzerland. So when you have been children, People used it to store stuff, for painting. So it was kind of the glass which was all over. And the whole advertising campaign was just about the form of that glass. And I think that was somehow I learned something about recycling, I learned something about advertising, and furthermore, even about recontextualization.
What was? Well, so we've been 9, huh, at this time.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
Ooh, I learned a lot.
1983. This is also a complicated story. I'm not sure if it was worldwide the same topic, but in Switzerland the pollution was really bad because of the cars, and it was before Al Gore went around. It was another animal called bark beetle. So he was eating the forest, and then we learn in school, hey, don't use your car anymore. The pollution is too bad. The forest will die, and if there is no forest, we will not survive. So that was actually the time when we told our parents to not buy a new family car. It was then the time when we bought this general abonnement for the whole family for the Swiss Railway. And that's also the reason why I don't have a driver license today, because there was no family car in front of our house when I was 18.
And somehow the bark beetle, I think, was the first messenger of an inconvenient truth. Right. And I think we got the message there.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we build bikeable bags right now, and not fashion bags or something else.
In the year 1990, that was the age. That's interesting now. How old have you been there? They're already 20, huh? I was 19. We actually went to the cinema, and we have been watching a film from David Lynch, Wild at Heart. And there was this one scene which, now we see if the sound is already here.
This is a snakeskin jacket. And for me, it's a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom. Asshole.
Well, the asshole was now... actually, I can translate, it's not that important, but what he says is, he wears a jacket, and he says, like, my skin jacket, my snakeskin jacket is a symbol for my personal freedom and individuality. So here we learned something about individual products and the feeling that they can provide to people. Okay, Markus was able to survive his solid design education in Switzerland. Right. So you made an apprenticeship as display artist?
Yeah, window dressing and things like that.
And 1 year later I did the same, but in a different design profession. I learned to be graphic artist. And now we're in the year 93, back again, where the story of the bag starts. The story starts actually with a living situation, and this living situation brought us to make individual recycled freeway bags. So how do you tell now a story of those bags? Of course, it's a little bit easier now. It's 18 years ago, and now we can look back a little bit. And we also try to analyze a little bit, okay, maybe what did we write? Or is there something like a recipe behind it? Or what could it be? And it's not really a theory, but somehow we try to bring our thoughts and ideas and aspects in an order. And what we figured out is that the term holistic is quite important to us. So to think around, to think in the beginning to the end and once again back. And I think this holistic approach is something which still makes us or keeps us busy, because we don't have the feeling we're finished. I think we're still have the feeling it was hard to get the time to go to Berlin, right? It's a lot to do, but still I think the holistic design is the approach which is the source to grow a sustainable brand.
Yeah, this is what we're still working on, and this is what we try to tell ourselves, our employees, and tonight we try to explain it also a little bit to you. This is the ABC to a holistic perspective, and it starts with A, which means designing your values, and that was also a little bit the try of our intro to become a brand builder. Maybe you have to know a little bit where you're coming from, and you have to know your inner values, which we transformed in a way now into our brand.
And of course, it's about the product. I think that's the homework. The product needs to be good, simple, and that for a long time. And it's probably not only about the product, but also the world around the product. So we talk a little bit about that. And then I think that's also what the school here is doing, kind of bringing the worlds together and say like, okay, we need creative people on the business side of an organization, but we also need the business aspect in the creative thoughts. And I think that's exactly what maybe we have been able to do, to also merge a little bit the business aspects with the creative.
Accept the heritage and the terroir as a value. Maybe you know the topic terroir. It's usually used in winery. So a Bordeaux can only grow in Bordeaux, and otherwise it would not taste like Bordeaux. And in our case, it's about the freeway, which is part of our terroir.
Yeah, that's the taste of the freeway, which is the base of our idea. It's not the beautiful luxury boutiques or the fashion world. It's about trucks and truckers. It's about that feeling of tarmac and freeways, and also especially about that one freeway. It's the only freeway which goes right through Zurich. It's called the Hardbrücke, and every truck from Germany which wants to go to Italy used to drive right through Zurich over that hard bridge. And as a student, and in that picture here, we are not talking about the truck. In that picture, we're talking about that little window up here, and that's the inconvenient flat of a student. A design student which shares a flat with two friends, which cycles every day to the art school, and that also in a rainy weather. And it was the need to have a bikeable bag, a bike messenger bag, which you couldn't buy in '93 in Zurich. So it was the living situation and the need for a waterproof, strong waterproof bag. And I think this combination made you want having a Freitag bag, right?
Yeah. And that's what we have to tell as well. We talk about the tarpaulin, which are covering those trucks, and they are waterproof and strong. And those trucks have been passing by like from 5 o'clock in the morning until midnight. And by searching the right material, the waterproof, strong material, it was this look out of the kitchen window at you, as you mentioned. And then we thought they are not so nice, the trucks, but they have really nice colors. And what is happening with those tarps after their life on a truck? And that was the reason why we started to collect old truck tarpaulins. I think it was one small piece we got from a trucking company. And the funny thing is the seat belt and the inner tube was already on a list, on a material list, which we developed a little earlier because we did some displays for a store which was selling products from the third world. Our mother was working there, and she told us, hey, they have so ugly windows. Could you not please help us to do something? But we don't have money. And we thought, okay, we can do that, but we would just use recycled material because they don't have a budget. And it was also the time when we started to think about what we learned so far in our apprenticeship in the advertising business. We thought, okay, they produce really a lot of crap and trash over there. For example, me, I was doing a lot of sets for photo shootings, for cars, for example, a lot of new material, and then one shot, and then you throw it away and you start to build the next set. And there we started to collect material to build up these shop windows, and there was the inner tube on the list because it's thrown away but still useful, and there was the seat belt. and a lot more materials. But then with the truck tarp, it came together, and it was like 3 material coming from the street, going back to the street as a bag.
This is the very first Freitag bag that we ever were doing. Yeah, it's quite shaky. We destroyed our mother's sewing machine. She was not strong enough. So then the first investment was buying a proper machine. That was with the salary from the apprenticeship. We were spending about 1,000 Swiss francs to buy a strong sewing machine. The bag now is in the Design Museum in Switzerland. So they have a good
The bag
place
was
for that.
on the kitchen table, and we've been sitting on the kitchen table, and one of my roommate was coming into the kitchen and have been asking, what are you doing? And we told him, we're looking for a brand name, you know, there is something missing on this product. And then we started to brainstorm, and we had already a long list, but then I think it was Peter who told us, hey, what are you looking for a name? You already have one. Which one do you mean? Well, Freitag means Friday in English, and that was actually not our idea to call this product Freitag, but since then it's called Freitag.
This is the only picture from the first workshop. It was this one-room flat, which Markus, the flat was sharing with 2 other friends. That's the 2 sewing machines, and the mattress was taken away, and I was coming to his flat to sew there, and then he was putting the mattress back again. So that was our first workshop. We have been cleaning the dirty tarps in the bath tube. So in the morning when the roommates wanted to take a shower, there was just a black water mess in the bath tube. When they wanted to come from the bathroom to the kitchen to have a coffee, we have been standing on the flame to cook and heating up making the knives glowing to cut the belts, and there was a smoke in the kitchen. So they had been, it was a hard time for them. We tried to keep them calm for a moment with giving them bags for free, but it didn't work forever. So then it was time for looking for our first atelier, and that was, I think, lucky for us as well, because we found an atelier space in an old industrial space. There's a lot of those spaces in Berlin, but it was really an industrial space. They produced gears for big ships and industry, and I think that was a very lucky moment because they had tools and that we couldn't afford. So there was a Gabelstapler, a forklift, and things like that we just could borrow. So I think that, and also the whole aesthetics of that industrial area kind of shows up in our whole aesthetic of the Freitag brand. That was the first testing in San Francisco. I wanted to work as a graphic designer in San Francisco and took the first Freitag bag to testing. This was a bike messenger, and I got some feedback that they liked the bag. Yeah, that was kind of a blending back to our terroir and the history where we started with the bags. And I think nowadays it's not just about the terroir, it's also about the production process, and especially nowadays that you have the social media and the new channels. I think if you don't care about that aspect, you can make stories in the foreground, but people will know quite quick that there is something wrong with it. And I think that's why we have been extremely consistent and only using old truck tarps since 18 years.
So you already passed the first step of our production process, which is called truck spotting. We have today I think 3 or 4 full-time employees. They buy the old truck tarps from the trucking company all over Europe. So they are not on the street every day. It's a little easier today because since we have the World Wide Web, you can Google some trucking companies as well. But if there is a color missed, and there are a lot of colors missing all the time, we send them to the freeway and they have to make pictures to see, okay, there is a black truck, which is where the company is from, and then they have to follow those tarps. This is now a tarp from Switzerland, the red tarp. This is the first step within our production hall in Zurich. It's very manual work, we put them on the floor. Luckily today we have tables there, so our people can work on the table, and they cut the big tarps into smaller pieces.
That's the storage of the tarps. It's if you imagine the amount of trucks that we cut down in 1 year, it's 98 kilometers of truck. Like the traffic jam would be the length of nearby 100 kilometers. So there's quite a few hundred trucks that we cut down every year. The next step in the production process is the washing, and somehow maybe it's interesting to tell we never wanted to have a factory, we just ended up with one. Because sometimes when you're small and you have this process and then you call up a company like, hey, we have these dirty tarps, would you be able to make a bag from that and cut it down or wash it? So, oh no, I mean those dirty tarps, that's not interesting for us, that's too small, and you're just not an interesting partner, and somehow we just kind of ended up producing the bags still ourselves and growing the factory. And I think now it's great for us, because I think to show those pictures of the production process, that's what you also could call marketing.
It's the individual cut with these patterns.
I was too fast.
Yeah. And then after that you have to collect the items here by color. So it's a second design process after the individual cut. It's the combination of the colors which make a bag. And then it's the sewing work. Then the whole logistic part is also done in Switzerland, in Zurich. So before and after.
Yes, we already mentioned the cycles. It's all about cycles, and not just about the cycle of turning or trying to turn a truck into a bag. I think there's different many cycles that we try to discover in our company. Maybe you have heard about the flagship store, which you will show you later on. You're turning a container into a shop, or also in other aspects of the company to use recycled materials or to use biodegradable materials. And I think it's always this moment of transformation where you can read that story and where you see that the container is still visible and it becomes a building, and then you start to think about that process of reusing and recontextualization. And I think this little moment of transformation, internally we call that the next life aspect, that you read the next life and it starts to talk to you. And I think that's also something, when I talk about the shop later on, when a person enters our flagship store, he already learned a lot about our brand, and I think that's important. Of course, growing from a student project of 2 persons into a company which is now of 130 people internally and a lot of people around us, which then need to tell that story maybe to end customers, and we have salespeople, around 400 shops worldwide which sell our products, so they all need to sell that story. And somehow then it becomes more and more important to also try to state those values. Not just everything you do yourself somehow it follows the same track, but how do you make then this, how can you multiply this effect? And so that's why we try to boil down our brand values in just a few words. And I go quick over that, but we're definitely an urban brand. You could say like sustainability is green, is nature, but no, we're an urban brand and live in the cities. I was talking about the aspect of recontextualization. We love to take objects, materials, sometimes only services or ideas, and put them into a new environment. And this functional change talks for itself. We're interested in design, in functional design. I think that's what good design is all about. It needs to work. We like to have beautiful products, but also products which really function every day. If Freitag would be a person, what is our personality? We want to be an honest brand. That's something which is not always easy when you're 130 people, and from sales department to product design to financial department, everybody wants to be honest, and we want to be transparent and clear. I think that's also the authentic moment in our brand. Then the next personality word is also a little bit sometimes now I use a Japanese word there instead. It's actually, yeah, probably I should talk one night about this one term, wabi-sabi, because it's a whole philosophy, but somehow the very simple translation could be beauty of imperfection. And somehow I think that's also something which is important to our brand. We here use the term slightly fucked up also to provoke ourselves a little bit. It's the roughness, the toughness of the products and the look of the brand. And the last one, it's maybe the sustainability, but since this word is used by every car company, we start to prefer the term intelligent, because we think sustainability at the end of the day is just how you should act intelligent. Long-lasting, innovative, sustainable, but also important to us is a little bit of humor, maybe irony, maybe the German word Spielwitz brings it to the best point. I think this little moment of playfulness is also important. We want the people to buy our bags because it feels good and not because they feel sorry for us or the environment.
And to be honest, this platform is a really good tool to work with, especially for our employees or suppliers, because we joined a lot of meetings, or we just saw people sitting on a table and talking about this is Freitag and no, this is not Freitag. I think Freitag is more like this. And then we came up with this 6 words, and since then I think it's pretty more focused. And also, to be honest, we went to an agency and they helped us to find our values. So it's
but also to mention is the first meeting is like, what do you want here? I mean, you have a perfect brand. I mean, go home. I mean, you don't need us. And we said, like, well, I think sometimes you need a therapist to recognize yourself, and I think that's what happened. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the product. That's the homework. I think it needs to be good, otherwise, yeah, a fake story will not help you. And I think the quality, the Swiss aspect maybe also in it, that we love good quality. Here you see a bag which was worn for about 18 years. It looks a little bit trashed, but the guy is using it every day. And so I just saw that guy on the street, and I was asking him if I could take a picture of that bag, which was in use for about 18 years. And I think that's an aspect which we love. People should buy the bag because they are long-lasting, not because the first one is damaged. I think a product should be relevant, but what is a relevant product? And then I think if it's relevant, maybe it becomes a classic, and that's definitely something you can steer yourself. I think this is something which happens. Maybe this is the main function. It's a bag, transport an object from A to B. That's why you buy a bag for, obviously. I need a bag because I need to transport my papers for study. I need a bag because I go shopping. So that's why you buy a bag. But then why do you buy a Freitag bag? And then I think it's about the subconscious moment. I think it's about the moments what you have. Maybe it's about the lack in life. So what you don't have. And I think in our case, it would be the individualism, the individuality, the uniqueness of our bags which really support something. The Freitag bag becomes a statement for a certain mindset. And I think that's what made us really existing for 18 years. And we're still selling the very first model since 18 years. And that's sometimes, I think, a fashion brand would say that's impossible. You need to change maybe every season or at least every 2 or 3 years. And we're selling the first bag since 18 years. I think it's because of these subconscious moments. And I think individualism is just one of those moments. And maybe this is also the reason why we ended up in this beautiful shelf here in the Museum of Modern Art. Of course, it's an honor for a designer to be in the design collection there. And I think it really helped us to kind of stage the moment that we somehow became something like a classic.
It's also good to explain our customers, which are mostly coming from the fashion field, what is the difference between a product and, for example, a fashion item. And usually they would like to put everything on sale 2 or 4 times a year. And this is also funny to see the signs on the door when they have like 50% discount on everything, but not on Freitag bags. It's written there. And this is a different mechanism we try to teach also to the boutiques and the fashion shops we sell through. And yeah, after years, they learned a little bit.
Try to bring simple functions into every bag. They are extremely reduced, only 5 pieces for the basic Freitag bag, but there's this function to grow the value, the volume of the bag from to double size, and this is just the little moments. It's also about the core of Freitag. We try to innovate the bike messenger bag. That's why we, about 15 years after the very first Freitag bag, we tried to re-innovate the messenger bag. This one is a very professional one, which is suitable to the hard life of a bike messenger. An urban messenger has a lot of functions which the first bag doesn't have, so we try to...
And maybe it's the first bag of those model who's going to Bangladesh. If you would like to test, please feel free to
yeah, so this one is more sophisticated than the very first one, but the main shape and concept still stays the same. Some impressions from our sports bag series. There we try to show the main sport of Switzerland, the Schwingen, kind of a farmer's wrestling. Something like a business bag. Just to give you an impression about the collection, which consists of about 60 products at the moment.
This is a normal night shift in the Freitag factory in Zurich while testing the products before they leave the factory.
What we see here is another collection. We call it the reference line. It's still the same material. It's tarpaulin. The look is a little bit more grown up, but still the very same materials. It was a campaign we did with Walter Pfeiffer and Das Magazin, one of the biggest newspapers in Switzerland. And so these are the journalists which were providing some pictures of how they used that bag. And it was a step for Freitag, away from the very colorful moment. It's a unicolored collection. As I mentioned, it's a little bit more grown up. And I think this is for us a whole new step. Also the customer base, the shops which sell those bags are a bit different. And I think this was, after 18 years, for us a good step into a direction of a little bit more, less loud, I would say. Sometimes it's not just the product itself, it's the world around the product. So you need to create beyond form and functions. And we just try to bring you some examples of things we did in that manner.
Was the Design a Truck contest. So we've been asking designers or artists to provide us with their drafts for a truck tarpaulin. The topic was transit, which means back and forth. And we got like 900 drafts from, I think, like 72 different countries. And then the winner was produced. It's now on the road. And I would say like within 1 or 2 years, we should do then this special collection out of these truck tarps. This was the winner, and it was a girl on a swing, which symbolizes the topic of transit back and forth.
Maybe another aspect which is beyond the function of the product itself, it's the free fix which we provide. Every Freitag store has fixed gear bicycles. You can go to Berlin to the store and just get one for free. You get a bike, you get a helmet, you get a lock and a Freitag bag, because we discovered ourselves when we come to a city, the first thing is, where can I get a bike? Because that's the way you can discover a city. It's not about walking, it's not about using the taxi, it's not taking the subway, because then you don't see the city, you don't feel the city. You need a bike, and that's why we had the idea to provide that feeling to every of our customers. So if you go to Zurich, you can get one, and in Berlin as well. So that's also somehow a service beyond the product, but it goes very well together with the product, because you get a bike messenger bag to test here. Shall I talk about this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on right now.
Well, this is a very early application which is bringing this trendy word mass customization to the internet. It's already about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's an application where you can design your own Freitag bag. You have pictures of tarpaulins, you have those patterns, and you can drag and drop them onto the tarpaulin, and you have a preview of the bag which you are designing. And it's not just a game, it's something you really can order. There's an order button, and if you give us your credit card number, we take the knife and start working. And we produce the bag exactly as you designed it. That's why it also has a special label. It doesn't say Freitag, it says only F, your fault, because you are responsible for that design. And it's really a piece of mass customization, and I think it's a perfect tool also to explain the story. Everybody who was playing with that application understands how we produce those bags. It's also not just digital, we sometimes do that as events, where people really can take the knife in their own hands and cut their very own Freitag bag. Very different scenes. If you're in Japan, you have a different mentality than if you go to Spain. It's also an interesting study for us, a cultural study of what kind of bag is designing which country. Yeah, we were talking about leadership. Okay, that's good. That's an interesting one. We need to talk about that later on. Yes, I think it's good when designers take leadership. And I think that what happened to us.
Oh my God.
It's in our meeting room.
And as you can see, we're not entirely serious about it, but what we are serious about is that the ownership is important. I think it's great that we can take the path in that direction that we like to go. Of course, we like to have the interaction with our team. Here you see the part of the team sitting in the canteen, and I think that's great that you can follow your ideas and not trying to have an investor's perspective and trying to fulfill that. And I think that's definitely something I would recommend, so that sometimes creative go and get the help from the business guys than the other way around. Because I think too often designers are called on stage too late. It's more about the form factor than in really creating all those holistic aspects, because I think design is really everywhere and not just in the form or the color. And I think that's something which maybe happens when you have two creatives founding a company and try to keep the ownership.
There was a time Daniel started to program something like a bookkeeping program. I was programming a program, and I think that was the point when I was calling a bookkeeper, and he explained, "Hey, you don't have to invent everything by yourself. There are programs already existing," because he's better in graphic design than in bookkeeping, and me too. And that was actually the experience we had to make to start hiring people, specialists for special functions. And I think since already 12 years, we have a CEO in the company, which is not called Freitag. It's an employee. Since 2 years, it's Monika Walser. And she's running actually the company, and we are teaming up with her as creative directors. So right now we're split it a little bit. You work more on visionary projects, and I'm more in the operative part of creative direction. And that was also the point actually when Monika, the CEO, was entering the company. She was really asking us to stay and to take care and not to leave now for the Bahamas, because she's running the company. And I think now it's a really nice work. And I think that was also my personal big goal at the time when we afford first employees doing, for example, the sales part and doing the production part, and that we had the possibility to go back in the creative field and developing products and concepts and ideas. And
I think it's a permanent search of the right focus level. How much detail work do you need to do yourself? How much kind of eagle perspective is right? And I think it's also going back and forth between those perspectives. And so I think sometimes you really need to dig in and care about the size of the typeface. And sometimes you need to go back and really having more the strategic thoughts, which are important. And sometimes we have the feeling one day we find the right position, but I think it's about the constant movement between those levels. Be honest and body with your believer. I don't like the word target group. I prefer the word brand friends. And I think that's also good to know who is wearing your product. And that was maybe one thing which was really lucky for us, because we never had to think in target groups, because we mostly were designing for ourselves. So we took ourselves as target group, we took ourselves as customers, and then I think it's much easier to design or to create, because you don't need to ask yourself, okay, what might the target group think of that? So we were just dealing with ourselves, and if we thought it's good, then we kind of were believing in that. Of course, it's interesting to see what happens out there. Now with the new medias, you can Google yourself or you can Google your brand, and that's sometimes a very interesting learning to see what stories are told, and that's interesting. It's just a bag, but sometimes it's incredible stories that you can find. That's just a little watch into the flicker from the helicopter pilot from Kazakhstan. This is a South Pole expedition with a Freitag bag on the most south place on Earth. And one of my favorites, the subtitle of that picture was "A Chunky Burned My Freitag Bag." Just interesting what happens. Innovate the sales tool. Yeah, it's not just about the product. Packaging is important. That's communication, especially in our case. We have unique products. If you have a stack of individual products, you only see one, the top one, but there's another 10 bags you need to see, and that's why we have this packaging, a box. On the front part of every box, there's a picture, an individual picture of every bag, and that becomes one of the I would say absolute success factors of Freitag, the packaging and the presentation of our products. So the box can be stacked up and becomes, I should jump over that, and the can be stacked up, and then you really have a shelf of bags, and you have on a very small ground, you have a huge selection of bags, and you really can choose your most beautiful Freitag bag. To create that feeling, we also needed to innovate something. Maybe you can talk about the shelf system.
Yeah, I think that the problem is always to have enough space in the store, especially if it's not your store, if it's a normal retailer. And it's only fun to choose a Freitag bag if you have a big collection. So we ask our retailers to present at least 12 of each model, 12 different color variations, and that's why we provide them with a shelf system. I go back, so it was a design prize winning, or it still is a design prize winning shelf system. It's 2 times the same module, and you can build up whole store environments, and you can also make a double size box, and it's pretty light and it's recyclable, and we deliver that to our retailers, and we also build up for example, the whole shop in New York out of this one and only tool. So it's fast and simple, and I think it's really a success factor to have then a really nice range of bags on not too much space in a store.
The stores itself, of course, that's beautiful if you have space to tell all the stories that you create. The first store was in Davos, in the Swiss mountains. The decision was to go over the fog level into a winter sports area, so you have a reason to go there. And we didn't go to a main city. The still is still running there since 10 years now. And I think that's obviously a great thing when you can really provide a huge selection. Here we have over 1,000 bags in our store in Hamburg, and then I think that's really the Freitag feeling when you choose your one and only bag. We have a shop in Köln. First we went into Germany, Berlin as the next step. Then we have the Vienna store, and since this spring we also have the store on Bowery in New York. And this shop here, I like to talk a little bit more in detail. And I start the story with the very beginning of the presentation, this little window from this student flat, the watch on the freeway with the trucks passing by. Just about 500 meters away was this factory space where we produce our bags. And then we discovered that there are not only trucks with tarpaulins, that there are also trucks with containers. And that brought us to the idea to use containers to build our flagship store in Zurich. We also provide a binocular and a platform, so you can go and climb up that store and do some truck spotting yourself. And I think within that picture, we really tell the story of the brand. And I think that's what this corporate architecture is all about. It's a small space, it's only 240 square meters. We went to the toy store, buying some little containers, and started playing around together with an architect. And then we decided on this kind of shape. We present over 1,600 bags, and went then to Hamburg to buy some old containers. They are quite cheap and rusty. We shipped them to Zurich actually on trains, but then the last mile with the truck. And the containers have been cut out the walls and floors, reinforced them in certain areas, and then it was like a big Lego play. Within 3 days, all the containers have been piled up and screwed together. It's not welded together. It's the same tool as they use on the ships on the ocean. Side lashings, and so the Freitag flagship store was built up. And I especially love this picture with the Mediterranean shipping company in front, and with the second top container, which is from the same company. And as I mentioned before, I think when somebody climbs up that platform, he really understands a lot about Freitag, and I think that's what corporate architecture is all about, explaining the values of the brand and not trying to, sometimes you have two brands, the brand of the architect and the brand of the company, and I think here we brought it in a good balance. We had a lot of coverage just for that flagship store. We even won Design Prize Germany, which was surprising to us. And sometimes then things happen which you can't steer yourself. If you go to YouTube, trying to Google the Freitag Tower, you find this movie.
这个是 Freitag 打在处理室，很漂亮哦，很漂亮哦。它倒了，它倒了，它倒了，倒了，倒了。
it's still there. It's still there, but it's shaky. So when you're up there, it's a little bit shaky, and you see people then with iPhones and making pictures, and somebody was inspired by that moment of little shakiness and made that movie. Later on, a Swiss local newspaper was seeing that movie on YouTube, and then the TV station was seeing the newspaper, and somehow the world was talking about if the tower is still up. And so I think that's also a story which gives you a lot of coverage and something you can't even design yourself.
The funny thing was the store manager had no idea about the film, and the media was standing in front of his store, and the store was still there, so it was a little bit a special situation for him, and I think the whole board was on a journey somewhere, and yeah, in the end it's a nice story. That was the story from our side. Thank you.